All right, thanks for coming back. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn you truly didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
The gavel hit the table like a gunshot. Once, sharp, final, every conversation in the room died instantly. I didn't move. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, glanced down at the document, then spoke in a voice that had probably handled more family implosions than weddings. Per the last will and testament of General Arthur Hale, the entirety of the family trust valued at $45 million, along with the Hale estate, is to be transferred to his youngest granddaughter, Riley Hale. Silence. Not the polite kind. Not the kind you get when people are thinking. This was the kind of silence where something breaks you. Just don't hear it yet. I kept my eyes forward. Across the table, my father's face went red so fast it looked painful. Harrison Hale, corporate consultant control addict, lifelong disappointment specialist, gripped the arm of his chair like it owed him money. My mother Evelyn didn't even try to hide it. Her lips parted, eyes wide like someone had just announced the house was on fire, and she realized she was the only one inside. Then there was Chloe, Major Chloe Hale, perfect posture, pressed uniform, not a single wrinkle out of place. She sat there like she belonged on a recruitment poster. She let out a long, slow breath, not surprised, not shocked, just disappointed. The kind of performance you practice in a mirror. I didn't look at her. I didn't have to. I could feel it coming. The shift, the move. A folder slid across the oak table, smooth, controlled, intentional. It stopped right in front of the lawyer. Chloe leaned forward slightly, her voice soft enough to sound compassionate, loud enough to control the room. "I'm sorry," she said with that rehearsed sadness people use when they're about to ruin someone's life. "But this can't move forward without addressing Riley's condition." There it was, right on schedule. The lawyer hesitated. "Major Hale, I'm not sure this is..." "She's a combat veteran with severe PTSD." Chloe cut in gently but firmly. "Documented paranoia, emotional instability. She's been off the grid for months at a time. No stable employment, no consistent communication. Each word landed like it had been polished before being released. She is not mentally fit to manage $45 million or a historic estate." She tapped the folder. "That's a full psychological evaluation from a licensed civilian psychiatrist." I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react. Inside the folder was a lie. A neat, printed, professionally formatted lie. Chloe turned her head slightly toward the lawyer, her eyes soft with fake concern. "I'm requesting that the clause regarding mental instability be activated. Riley should be placed under financial guardianship." A pause. Then she finished it clean. "I'm willing to take responsibility." "Of course you are." The room shifted again. This time, it tilted toward her. My father leaned forward immediately like someone had just handed him a script he'd been waiting his whole life to read. "Look at her," Harrison said, not even bothering to lower his voice. "She hasn't said a word. That's exactly what I've been dealing with." He pointed at me like I was a problem someone forgot to solve. Unemployed, isolated, living like a damn ghost, and now we're supposed to hand her $45 million, a short, bitter laugh. That would be an insult to my father's legacy. My mother nodded quick and desperate. "He's right," Evelyn added, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. "We've tried to help her, but she refuses everything. Therapy, family support. Anything." She looked at the lawyer like she was asking for permission to be the victim. "She's not well." I finally looked down, at the folder. The paper was clean, crisp, recently printed. Civilian letterhead. Signature at the bottom. Fake. Not even a good one. The diagnosis was detailed enough to scare people who didn't know what they were looking at, which meant it was designed for exactly this room. I picked it up. Slowly, no rush, no reaction, just observation. My father kept talking. Of course he did. You give her that kind of money, it's gone in a year. Best case. Worst case. She hurts herself. Or someone else. He leaned back like he'd just made a reasonable point. "She's not stable." I folded the paper once. Neatly, then again, precise. I placed it back on the table, and finally I spoke. "You're playing a game you don't understand, Major." My voice didn't rise. Didn't sharpen, didn't carry emotion, it didn't need to. Chloe's eyes flicked to mine for the first time. Really looked this time. Measuring, calculating, still confident. She gave a small, almost amused smile. "I'm trying to protect you, Riley." "No, you're not." You're trying to survive. The lawyer cleared his throat, uncomfortable now. Given the claim of mental instability, he said cautiously, this may require further evaluation before the assets can be legally transferred. That's what she wanted. Delay, control, time to move money, time to bury something. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, loud enough to cut through whatever illusion was left in the room. Every head turned. I stood up. No sudden movements, no tension, just done. My mother's voice followed me immediately. Riley, please don't make this worse. I didn't respond. My father tried one more time, louder. You walk out of here, you're proving her point. Still nothing. Chloe didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She thought she'd already won. I stepped away from the table, each step measured, each movement controlled. No hesitation, no second thoughts. At the door, I paused for half a second. Not to look back, just to register the room. 3 people who thought they understood me, and 1 who thought she'd outplayed me. Then I left. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Not dramatic, not loud, final. The hallway was empty, quiet. I walked past the framed photos, the polished wood. The artificial calm of a place built to handle legal disasters without emotion. My phone stayed in my pocket. No calls, no messages, no need. By the time I reached the street, I already knew what Chloe had done, and more importantly, why. You don't fabricate a psychiatric report unless you're desperate. You don't risk something that sloppy unless the clock is already running, which meant this wasn't about control. It was about survival, hers. I stepped into the car, closed the door, and let the silence settle for exactly 3 seconds. Then I started the engine. No music, no distractions, just the road. And the next move. Because Chloe made one critical mistake. She thought this was a family argument. It wasn't. It was an operation. And she just stepped onto a field she doesn't even know exists. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a room where everyone decided who you were, without realizing you were the only one who actually knew what was going on? Comment below. The keypad beeped once as I entered the code, and the deadbolt clicked open under my hand. From the outside, the place looked exactly like my family described it. Cracked paint, narrow hallway. The kind of building people walked past without making eye contact. Inside it was something else entirely. The door shut behind me with a soft, controlled push. No slam, no wasted motion. I locked it, then moved straight to the back wall. Another keypad, another code. A panel slid open, revealing the server stack compact quiet. Running on a closed system tied to networks most people don't even know exist. The air inside the room carried a low, steady hum. Clean, controlled, predictable, unlike my family. I set my keys down on the counter and checked the time. 3 minutes. That's how long it took Chloe to make her next move. I heard it before I saw anything. A car door, then another, then boots on concrete. Measured, official, not subtle. I walked to the front door, stopped just short of it, and listened. Male voices, 2 of them, professional tone, calm. Used to being in charge of situations they don't fully understand. Then Chloe, soft, shaky, controlled panic. She hasn't been answering her phone, she said, voice cracking in all the right places. She's been unstable. She has access to weapons. I'm really scared she might hurt herself. A pause. She's not well, of course. Set the stage, define the narrative before anyone sees me. A hard knock hit the door. Police. Ma'am, we need you to come to the door. Another knock, louder. Riley Hale, we're here for a welfare check. Open the door and show your hands. I stood there for a second, not thinking, not hesitating, just aligning, heart rate steady, breathing even, 55 beats per minute, right where it should be. This wasn't pressure, this was routine. I unlocked the door, opened it halfway, then fully, both hands visible, relaxed at my sides. 2 officers stood in the hallway, one slightly ahead of the other, hands near their holsters, not on them. Good training, not great. Behind them, Chloe stood a few feet back, eyes red, tears on cue. She looked at me like I was a tragedy she couldn't fix. Riley, she said softly, stepping forward just enough to be seen, not enough to interfere. I was worried about you. I didn't respond. The lead officer stepped in slightly. Ma'am, we got a call expressing concern for your safety. Do you have any weapons in the residence? Yes, I said, direct. No hesitation. His posture tightened. Where are they located? Secured. Locked. In compliance with state law. He studied my face, looking for instability, looking for agitation. He didn't find any. All right, he said. We're going to need to verify that. Also, can you step outside for a moment? I stepped forward. Slow, controlled, no sudden movements. Chloe shifted her weight behind them, watching every detail like it was feeding her. The second officer raised a flashlight and angled it toward my face. Just going to check your eyes, okay? He didn't wait for an answer. The beam hit directly, bright, focused. He was looking for dilation, irregular response, signs of substance use, emotional spikes. My pupils reacted exactly as they should. No delay, no overcorrection, just baseline. His hand paused for half a second, then lowered. He leaned back slightly, not dramatic, just enough. I held his gaze, not aggressive, not submissive, neutral, controlled. He broke eye contact first. That told me everything. Do you know why someone would be concerned about your mental state? The first officer asked. I nodded once. Yes. And why is that? My sister is attempting to establish legal grounds for financial guardianship. No emotion, no accusation, just fact. The air shifted. Both officers registered it immediately. The second one glanced back at Chloe. She stepped forward quickly, trying to recover control. She doesn't understand what's happening, Chloe said, voice tightening under the surface. She's been paranoid for months. She thinks people are after her, that there are conspiracies. I don't think, I said calmly. She stopped. I continued. I verify. Silence. Short, sharp. The first officer looked between us. Ma'am, he said to me, have you had any recent psychiatric evaluations? Yes. By whom? Military Medical Board. Chloe's jaw tightened, barely visible, but it was there. Do you have documentation? He asked. Not on me. True. And irrelevant. He nodded slowly. All right, can you tell me today's date? I did. Current location? I told him. President of the United States answered. No hesitation, no delay, no error. Basic orientation checks. I passed them before he finished asking. He exhaled quietly. The tension in his shoulders dropped. Just a fraction, but enough. He looked at his partner, then back at me. Do you feel like you're a danger to yourself or anyone else? No. Have you had thoughts of harming yourself? No. Anyone else? No. Clean, consistent, final. He stepped back, fully this time. Hand moved away from his holster. Decision made. The second officer lowered his flashlight completely and shifted his stance. Not defensive anymore, neutral. Then he looked at Chloe, not kindly, not aggressively, just questioning. Ma'am, he said, what exactly did you report? Chloe blinked. Once, then again, recalculating. She's been unstable, she insisted, but the edge was gone now. I was just trying to make sure she's safe. The first officer nodded, but there was distance in it now. We understand, he said. But based on what we're seeing, she's coherent-oriented and not presenting any immediate risk. Translation. You overplayed your hand. Chloe's fingers curled slightly at her sides. She forced a small, tight smile. I just didn't want anything to happen. Nothing is going to happen. Not the way you planned. The officers turned back to me. Ma'am, we're going to clear this call, the first one said. If you need anything, you can contact local services. I won't, I said. A slight pause, then he nodded. They stepped away, past Chloe, without another word to her. The hallway emptied one step at a time. Boots on concrete again, controlled, fading. Chloe stayed where she was, for a second, then two. She didn't look at me immediately. When she did, the concern was gone, completely. What replaced it was tight, angry, calculating. You think this changes anything? She said under her breath. I met her eyes. No, I said. It clarifies everything. Her jaw flexed. No response. She turned, walked away. No performance this time, just control slipping. The sound of the patrol car doors closing echoed up the stairwell, then the engine, then the siren chirp, fading, gone. I stepped back inside, closed the door, locked it. The silence settled again, clean, predictable. I walked to the back wall, entered the second code, and the panel slid open. The server lights blinked steadily, waiting. I pulled out a chair and sat down. No hesitation now, no observation phase, action. Because Chloe didn't call the police to check on me. She did it to document instability, to build a record, to support the lie she started in that room, which meant she was in a hurry, which meant there was something she couldn't afford to have exposed. I placed my hands on the keyboard, powered up the secure system, and started digging. The fan spun up, filling the room with a low, constant hum, steady, controlled, just like everything else that was about to happen. The blue light from the monitor settled across my face as the system finished booting. No hesitation now, no more observation. This was the part where things stopped being speculation. I logged into the secure network using credentials that didn't exist on paper. Layers of encryption stacked over each other, each one designed to keep people like Chloe out. Ironically, she had clearance, just not enough. I pulled up her profile first. Major Chloe Hale, JAG Core, decorated, clean record, promotion track intact. On the surface. I opened the financial overlay. That's where the cracks usually start. At first glance, everything looked controlled. Salary deposits, investment accounts, standard military financial behavior. Then I widened the scope. Linked entities, shell accounts, third-party contractors. That's when the pattern shifted. Money doesn't disappear, it moves. You just have to follow it long enough. A series of transfers lit up across the screen, small amounts at first, 10,000, 25. Always under thresholds that would trigger automatic flags. Smart, but not smart enough, because they were consistent. Same vendors, same routing structures, same timing windows. That's not random, that's a system. I ran a deeper trace. The names of the contractors came up next. Defense supply companies, mid-level vendors, nothing high profile. Exactly the kind that get ignored unless someone's looking for them. I opened one, then another, and another, each one tied back to procurement approvals Chloe had signed off on. Legal clearance, contract validation, oversight authority. She built the pipeline herself. I leaned back slightly, not impressed, just confirming. You really thought no one would check, I said under my breath. Then I opened the audit schedule. That's when it made sense. A federal review had already been flagged, pending, not public yet. Internal, 45 days out. That's the kind of timeline that makes people desperate. Because once that audit hits, everything unravels. Every signature, every approval, every transaction. And Chloe wasn't just skimming, she was buried. The numbers stacked fast once I aggregated them. Hundreds of thousands, then millions, hidden across multiple channels but all feeding the same deficit. She wasn't building wealth, she was plugging holes and losing, which meant the inheritance wasn't a bonus, it was a bailout. I zoomed in on the largest transfers. That's where people get careless. The amounts were bigger, the routing more complex. But the intent was the same. Move money fast, hide it faster. One transaction flagged my attention. Unusual routing. Different structure. I opened it. The screen paused for half a second, then expanded. New data set. New name. I didn't react immediately, just read it again, then once more, to be sure. Harrison Hale, my father, listed as the registered owner of multiple LLCs connected to the transaction chain. I exhaled slowly, not surprised, just confirmed. I pulled up the corporate records. Each company was structured cleanly. Legal filings, tax compliance, all in place. On paper, they were legitimate. In reality, they were washing machines. Money came in from Chloe's contractors, got filtered through Harrison's companies, came out clean, untouchable, family business, just not the kind they talk about at dinner. I ran a cross-reference. Every major transfer Chloe made tied back to one of Harrison's entities. Every single one. That wasn't support, that was coordination. I scrolled further. Emails, encrypted but not beyond reach. Short messages, no names, no details, just confirmations. Cleared, processed. Delay 48 hours. Enough to establish intent. Enough to establish knowledge. Enough to establish conspiracy. I sat there for a moment. Not emotional, not angry, just recalibrating the board. This wasn't Chloe acting alone. This was a family operation, and I was the expendable piece. The unstable one. The perfect cover story. Blame the quiet daughter, call her crazy, take her inheritance, fix the financial damage, walk away clean. It almost worked. If I had reacted the way they expected, if I had raised my voice, lost control, proved their narrative, but I didn't. And now this existed. I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out a small case, titanium shell, military-grade storage, no external identifiers. I plugged the USB into the system. The interface recognized it immediately. Secure transfer only. No partial files, no corruption, everything or nothing. I selected the full dataset. Financial records, corporate filings, transaction logs, internal communications, audit flags, all of it. Then I hit transfer. The progress bar moved steadily across the screen. No interruptions, no errors, clean extraction. While it copied, I opened one last file. Chloe's personal liability summary, credit exposure, debt ratios, pending obligations. It was worse than I expected. She wasn't just at risk, she was already collapsing. The audit wasn't going to catch her, it was going to bury her, which explained everything. The fake diagnosis, the urgency, the welfare check. She wasn't trying to win, she was trying to survive long enough to fix it. Using my money, my name, my life. The transfer completed with a soft notification. I ejected the USB, closed the system, then sat there for a second. Quiet, still. I tapped my finger once against the desk. A light-controlled sound, not impatience, timing. Because everything I needed was now in one place. Portable, secure, actionable, no assumptions left, no questions unanswered, just evidence. I picked up the USB and turned it once between my fingers. Weight felt right, balance felt right. Then I stood up. No rush, no hesitation. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a conversation, it was going to be a correction. And this I slipped the USB into my pocket, was the part they didn't plan for. The room stayed quiet behind me as I shut everything down. Servers continued running, data secured, nothing left exposed. I walked to the door, paused just long enough to check the locks, then stepped out into the hallway. The building was still the same, worn, forgettable, invisible. Exactly how I needed it. Because the people who think they understand you rarely look twice, and the ones who don't look are the easiest to dismantle. I headed toward the stairs, each step measured, each movement controlled. No wasted energy, no second thoughts. By the time I reached the street, the plan was already set. Not revenge, not anger, just alignment. Cause and effect. They made a move. Now it was my turn. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and let the silence settle one more time. Tomorrow everything changes. Not because I'm going to prove them wrong, but because I'm going to show them exactly how wrong they already are. I tapped my finger once more against the steering wheel, same rhythm, same control, and let the sound fade into the quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I took my seat at the defense table, cold, flat, unforgiving, the kind of lighting that makes everything look more honest than it is. Chloe was already there. Of course she was. Perfect posture, perfect uniform, perfect setup. A thick stack of documents sat in front of her, tabbed, labeled, organized like a textbook example of concern. Harrison sat beside her, jaw tight, hands folded like he was trying to hold himself together or hold something back. Hard to tell which. Evelyn was positioned just behind them, tissues, ready eyes, already wet. Everyone had a role. Everyone came prepared. Except me. That's what they thought. The judge entered without ceremony, took his seat, and glanced down at the file in front of him. "Let's proceed," he said. Chloe stood immediately. Confident, controlled. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. "Your Honor," she began, voice steady, with just enough emotional weight to sound sincere. "This is not an easy matter for me to bring forward." That was her opening move. Reluctant hero, sacrificing sister. "I love my sister," she continued, pausing just long enough to let that sit. "But I also have a duty to my family and to the law, to ensure that she is not placed in a position that could harm herself or others." She gestured to the stack of documents. These records outline a pattern of behavior spanning several years. Harrison leaned forward slightly, adding pressure without speaking. Chloe flipped the first page. "Extended periods of disappearance," she said. "No contact, no explanation, months at a time." She looked up briefly. From our perspective, she was wandering, unaccounted for, detached from reality, from yours. "Exactly," the judge nodded slowly, eyes moving across the documents. Chloe continued. "Unstable employment history, social withdrawal, increasing paranoia." Each word was placed carefully. Not too aggressive, not too soft, just enough to shape the narrative. Then she stepped aside. Your Honor. I've also brought in a licensed civilian psychiatrist to provide expert testimony. The man stood up from the side bench, mid-50s, clean suit, calm demeanor, the kind of person people trust because he looks like he's supposed to be trusted. He took the stand, was sworn in, and adjusted his glasses. I've reviewed the provided records, he said, voice measured. Based on the behavioral patterns and documented symptoms, I would classify the subject as exhibiting signs consistent with paranoid schizophrenia. Clean, direct, confident. He didn't know me, didn't need to. He was paid to validate a conclusion. She demonstrates emotional detachment, hypervigilance, and difficulty forming stable interpersonal connections. He continued. Hypervigilance, that almost made me smile. In civilian terms, he added, glancing at the judge, this presents a risk, particularly if she is placed under significant financial or environmental stress. The judge leaned back slightly, processing, not questioning, just absorbing. Chloe stepped forward again. Your Honor, I am requesting that the court recognize Riley Hale as mentally unfit to manage her inheritance and appoint a financial guardian. A brief pause. I am willing to assume that responsibility. Of course you are. Harrison finally spoke. Judge, he said, voice firm. Now we're not trying to take anything from her. We're trying to protect her. He gestured in my direction without looking at me. She doesn't live like a normal person. She isolates. She disappears. She refuses help. He shook his head slightly. This isn't about money, it's about safety. Evelyn stepped in right on cue, a soft sob. Perfect timing. I'm sorry, she said, voice breaking as she looked toward me. I'm so sorry, Riley, but this is for your own good. The judge looked at me, finally, not with hostility, not even with suspicion, with sympathy. That was worse. Miss Hale, he said, do you have anything you'd like to say in response? I stood up. No rush, no hesitation. The room shifted slightly as I moved. Attention rebalanced. I didn't look at Chloe, didn't look at my parents, just the judge. I do, I said. My voice carried clean. No strain, no emotion, just clarity. I am a combat veteran. A slight pause, not for effect, for accuracy. I have operated in classified environments where silence and situational awareness are not symptoms. The judge blinked once, listening, not fully understanding yet. That behavior, I continued, as discipline. I let that sit. No elaboration, no explanation. Then I moved to the point. Under the Veterans Rights Act, I formally request an independent mental competency evaluation conducted by a United States military medical board before any ruling is issued regarding my legal capacity. The room went quiet, not shocked, not dramatic, just recalculating. The judge frowned slightly, considering. Chloe didn't react immediately, then a small laugh, sharp, controlled. She leaned closer just enough that only I could hear her. You just buried yourself, she whispered. Her breath was steady, confident. They're not going to clear you, she continued quietly. They're going to lock you up. I didn't look at her, didn't respond, didn't need to. She leaned back, satisfied. From her perspective, this was perfect. Military evaluation meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant exposure. Exposure in her mind meant confirmation. She thought she had just pushed me into the final step of her plan. The judge cleared his throat. Given the request, he said slowly, this court may need to consider. He didn't finish the sentence, because the doors opened. Not gently, not quietly. The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom swung wide with a force that didn't belong in a family court. Every head turned. The room changed instantly, not emotionally, physically, like pressure dropped all at once. A man stepped inside, older, straight posture, uniform, not ceremonial, not decorative, real. Decorations across his chest that didn't need explanation. He didn't rush, didn't hesitate, just walked forward like the room already belonged to him. 2 uniformed personnel followed behind him, silent and precise. Chloe straightened immediately, automatic, instinctive, recognition. She stood up fast, almost too fast, and snapped into a formal posture. Sir Major Chloe Hale, she began. He didn't look at her, didn't slow down, didn't acknowledge her existence. He passed her like she was furniture. Her voice stopped mid-sentence. That's when her expression changed. Not fear, not yet, but something close. The man approached the bench, The judge sat up straighter. Instinct again. Presence recognized before identity confirmed. Your Honor, the man said, voice calm, but absolute. I understand there has been a request for a military evaluation. The judge nodded slowly. Yes, that's correct, and you are. He reached into his coat, pulled out identification, and placed it on the bench. No flourish, no explanation, just fact. Dr. Vance, he said. Director of Medical Operations, Joint Special Operations Command. The room didn't react immediately, because most of them didn't understand what that meant. Chloe did. I didn't need to look at her to know that. The shift in the air was enough. The judge picked up the ID, studied it briefly, then looked back up. I see, he said. Careful now, more cautious. Dr. Vance nodded once. I'm here to conduct the evaluation. Simple, direct, final. Chloe's confidence cracked. Just slightly, but enough. Because this wasn't part of her plan. The door hinges groaned as the weight of the moment settled over the room. You could feel it. Not emotion, pressure. The kind that makes people sit up straighter without knowing why. Dr. Vance didn't stop walking until he reached the center of the courtroom. Every step was controlled, measured, like he wasn't entering the room, he was taking control of it. This wasn't a civilian psychiatrist. No soft tone. No clipboard. No attempt to make anyone comfortable. His uniform carried more authority than anything Chloe had brought into this building. Rows of ribbons, combat insignia, rank that didn't need to be announced twice. Chloe stood up immediately, sharp, automatic. Sir Major Chloe Hale, she said, snapping into formality, trying to regain ground she didn't realize she'd already lost. She reached for the folder on the table, the one she had built her entire argument on, and stepped forward. I've prepared a full psychological profile of Dr. Vance. Walked past her. Didn't slow down, didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her voice. It was like she wasn't there. Her words cut off mid-sentence. For the first time since this started, Chloe didn't have control of the room. She stood there for a second, hand still holding the folder, posture, locked in place with nowhere to go. I didn't move, didn't react, just watched. Dr. Vance stopped at the bench, turning his attention to the judge, like the rest of the room had already been processed and dismissed. Your Honor, he said. Voice calm, but carrying enough weight to shut down anything that might interrupt him. I'm here in response to the request for a military evaluation. The judge nodded, more careful now. Yes, that's correct. Chloe recovered quickly. She stepped forward again, faster this time. Sir, with respect, she said, holding out the folder, this documentation has already been reviewed by a licensed civilian specialist. It outlines. Dr. Vance took the folder from her hand. Not gently, not aggressively, just efficiently. For a second, Chloe looked relieved, like she had regained a foothold, like she still had a chance to control the narrative. Dr. Vance didn't open it, didn't flip through it, didn't even glance at the cover. He turned slightly, located the trash can beside the judge's bench, and dropped it. The folder hit the inside with a heavy final sound. Not loud, but unmistakable. The entire room froze. No one spoke. No one moved. Because that wasn't just dismissal. That was a verdict. Chloe didn't react immediately. Her brain needed a second to catch up with what just happened. She started, voice tight, controlled but slipping. Dr. Vance turned back to the judge before she could finish. That document, he said, tone unchanged, is fraudulent. Direct. No buildup, no hesitation. The word landed harder than anything Chloe had said all morning. I've seen thousands of evaluations, he continued. That one doesn't meet basic military or medical standards. The judge leaned forward slightly, concern replacing sympathy. You're saying the diagnosis is invalid, he asked. I'm saying it's fabricated, Dr. Vance replied. Clean, final. Across the room, I heard my mother's breath catch. Evelyn looked at the trash can like it had just exposed something she wasn't ready to see. Harrison didn't move, didn't speak. But the tension in his face shifted. Not anger anymore. Something closer to calculation. Chloe finally found her voice again. Sir, with all due respect, you haven't even reviewed the full contents of that file, she said, forcing her tone back into something professional. Mistake. Dr. Vance turned his head just enough to acknowledge her. Not fully, just enough. I don't need to, he said. Silence. Again. Heavy, controlled. Because everyone in that room understood what that meant. His judgment didn't require her evidence. Her evidence wasn't worth reviewing. Chloe took a small step forward. Not aggressive, but desperate. That evaluation was conducted by a licensed psychiatrist, she insisted. Are you suggesting I'm not suggesting anything major? Dr. Vance cut in. His voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen, but it ended the conversation. I'm stating a fact. He turned fully now, facing the judge again. The request before this court is to determine whether Riley Hale is mentally competent to manage her own affairs. The judge nodded slowly. Yes. Dr. Vance placed both hands on the bench. Steady, grounded, I will conduct that evaluation, he said. Personally. The word landed exactly where it needed to, because this wasn't standard. This wasn't routine. This was escalation, and Chloe knew it. I could feel it without looking at her, the shift in her breathing, the way her control tightened instead of relaxed. This wasn't going the way she planned, not even close. Harrison leaned slightly toward her, whispering something under his breath. She didn't respond, didn't look at him, because whatever he said didn't matter anymore. The judge cleared his throat. Very well, he said. If you are qualified to perform the evaluation, I am, Dr. Vance replied. No hesitation, no explanation, just authority. The judge nodded. Then the court will allow your honor, Dr. Vance interrupted just slightly enough to redirect the flow without breaking protocol. The judge stopped, listening. This evaluation will require access to classified performance records, he said, and I will be presenting findings that may not align with the assumptions already made in this room. A pause, not long, but enough. The judge processed that, adjusted, understood, he said. Proceed. Dr. Vance gave a single nod, then turned, finally, toward me. Our eyes met for the first time since he walked in. No greeting, no acknowledgement, none needed. This wasn't introduction, this was confirmation. He already knew who I was. The rest of the room didn't, yet. Chloe shifted again, subtle, but visible now. Her confidence wasn't gone, but it wasn't stable anymore. Because control requires predictability, and she just lost it. Completely. Dr. Vance reached down beside him, picked up a leather briefcase. Dark, reinforced, secured. He placed it on the table in front of the judge. No rush, no performance, just precision. The metal zipper caught the light as his hand moved. A sharp, clean sound cut through the silence as he opened it. And just like that, whatever Chloe built this case on stopped mattering. The briefcase opened with a sharp metallic sound that cut straight through the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Dr. Vance reached inside and pulled out a single file. Thick, structured, secured, stamped in bold red across the front, eyes only. The kind of label that doesn't invite questions. It ends them. He placed the file on the bench in front of the judge, not dramatically, not carefully, just with the certainty of someone who knows exactly what he's about to do. Chloe finally broke, not completely, but enough. Sir, with respect, she said, voice tight now, the confidence forced instead of natural. Riley has demonstrated clear signs of psychological instability. She doesn't communicate normally, she isolates. Dr. Vance turned. Fast, not aggressive, but immediate. And that was worse. His eyes locked onto her, cold, focused, command-level attention. Doesn't communicate, he repeated. No emotion, just precision. Chloe hesitated. For the first time, she didn't have the next sentence ready. She's withdrawn, Chloe said, trying to recover. Unresponsive. That's consistent with no, Dr. Vance said. Just one word. It landed harder than anything she had said all day. He stepped forward slightly, not toward her, toward the truth. The woman you're describing? He continued, voice steady but carrying something underneath it, now controlled anger. The kind that doesn't flare, it cuts, is not unstable. A pause. Then she is one of 6 Tier 1 sniper assets currently active under United States Special Operations Command. Silence. Absolute. The kind that doesn't come from confusion. It comes from impact. The judge didn't move, didn't speak, because he didn't know how to process what he just heard. Harrison blinked once, then again, like his brain needed time to catch up with a reality he never considered. Evelyn's hand moved to her mouth, too late to stop the reaction. Chloe didn't blink, she just stared, because everything she built depended on one assumption, that I was small, manageable, predictable. Dr. Vance opened the file, flipped to the first marked page. Annual psychological evaluation, he said. Reading directly. No interpretation, no translation. Just fact. Subject demonstrates cognitive resilience within the top 0.001% of United States Armed Forces personnel. The judge leaned forward. Slow, careful, like the words might change if he got closer. Heart rate control under extreme stress environments optimal. Maintains operational stability in life-threatening conditions without deviation. I didn't move, didn't react. Because none of this was new to me. This was routine, documentation, verification. Dr. Vance continued. Tactical cognition exceptional. Subject processes complex variables in real time with a precision rate exceeding 99% accuracy. He turned a page, didn't rush, didn't pause for effect, just continued dismantling everything Chloe said. Emotional regulation controlled. Subject demonstrates the ability to suppress non-essential responses in high-risk environments. That one landed, because that's what they called a problem. Silence, distance, control. Dr. Vance closed the file halfway, then looked directly at the judge. She is not mentally unstable, Your Honor. His voice didn't rise, didn't need to. She is trained to operate without hesitation, without emotional interference, and without error. He let that sit, then added the behavior her family is describing as dysfunction is in fact operational discipline. Across the room, Chloe's face changed, slowly, like something was draining out of it. Color first, then control. Her posture stayed straight. Her training wouldn't let it collapse. But her eyes, that's where it showed. Because this wasn't just contradiction, this was exposure. Her entire argument reduced to ignorance in less than 60 seconds. Dr. Vance didn't look at her again. He didn't need to. She has been evaluated repeatedly under conditions that would break most individuals, he continued. She remained stable. He closed the file, completely, then placed his hand flat against it, grounding the conclusion. She is not a risk to herself. A beat. She is not a risk to others. Another beat. She is a controlled asset with one of the most disciplined cognitive profiles currently documented. The judge exhaled slowly, not realizing he'd been holding his breath. Across the room, Harrison shifted in his seat, not confident anymore, not aggressive, just adjusting, because the version of me he built in his head didn't exist. Evelyn lowered her hand from her mouth. Too late to hide the reaction, too late to pretend she didn't hear it. Chloe finally spoke again, but it came out different, less precise, less controlled. That's she started then stopped recalibrating. That doesn't change the fact that she's unpredictable in a civilian environment. Desperate pivot. Dr. Vance didn't even turn this time. Unpredictable to you, he said. Flat, final, because you don't understand what you're looking at. That was it. No follow-up, no explanation, just a line drawn. Chloe's jaw tightened. Her hands remained at her sides, but the tension was visible now. Contained, but barely, because there's a difference between losing control and realizing you never had it. The courtroom stayed quiet. No one rushed to speak. No one tried to redirect, because there was nothing left to argue. The narrative was gone, replaced, clean, complete, and impossible to ignore. I stepped forward, slow, measured. Every eye followed. Not because I demanded attention, but because they finally understood where it belonged. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the USB titanium casing, small, unremarkable, until you know what's inside. I placed it on the table in front of the judge. The sound was light, controlled, but it carried. This, I said, voice steady, unchanged, is the part you haven't seen yet. No build-up, no explanation, just fact. Because the evaluation proved what I am. This proves what they did. I didn't look at Chloe, didn't need to. I could feel it. The shift from doubt to fear. And for the first time since this started, she understood something critical. This wasn't a defense. This was a counterattack. The USB hit the wood with a dry, controlled sound, not loud, not dramatic, final. Every eye in the room dropped to it. I didn't look at Chloe, didn't look at my parents. I looked at the judge. I told you, I said, voice steady, level, you don't understand the rules of the game you're playing, Major. No anger, no satisfaction, just clarity. The judge hesitated for half a second, then reached for the USB. Clerk, he said, without taking his eyes off me, pull this up on the display. The clerk moved quickly, plugged it in, clicked through the secure prompt. The projector flickered once, then lit up the wall behind the bench. Rows of numbers, clean, organized, damning. The first document filled the screen. Federal audit pre-flag, pending review. Associated accounts highlighted in red. The room didn't react immediately, because people don't understand what they're looking at until they do. Scroll, I said. The clerk hesitated, then followed. Transaction logs expanded. Dates, amounts, routing paths, repeated patterns. Large sums broken into smaller transfers. Layered through multiple accounts. Standard laundering structure. Chloe shifted. Subtle, but I felt it. Continue, I said. The next file opened. Corporate registry, ownership records, LLCs, shell companies, each one clean on paper, each one connected underneath. The judge leaned forward, closer now, engaged. Highlight that column, I added. The clerk did. Names appeared, one after another, then stopped. On one. Harrison Hale. My father didn't move, didn't speak, but his breathing changed. Barely. Enough. That's incorrect, he said quickly, too quickly. There has to be some mistake. Open the filing documents, I said. The clerk clicked. State registration forms filled the screen. Signatures, dates, tax IDs, everything legal, everything traceable, everything real. Harrison's name was on all of it. No interpretation needed, no explanation required, just fact. The silence in the room thickened. Not empty, heavy, because now they understood. This wasn't a claim. This wasn't an argument. This was evidence. Continue, I said. The next file opened. Internal transfers, cross-referenced with military contractor payments. The pattern became obvious, even to people who didn't want to see it. Money moved from defense vendors to Chloe's approved channels, then into Harrison's companies, then out again, clean, untouched, untraceable. Unless you knew where to look. Evelyn made a small sound, not quite a sob, not quite a word, just realization catching up. Chloe didn't move, didn't blink. She was staring at the screen like it might change if she focused hard enough. It didn't. Those companies, I said, ComDirect, exist solely to process unauthorized funds tied to military procurement contracts. No emotion, no emphasis, just truth. The judge looked up, from the screen, to me. Are you alleging fraud, he asked. I'm presenting it, I replied. A pause, short, then opened the communications file. The clerk clicked again, encrypted messages appeared. Time-stamped, short, efficient, cleared, processed. Delay 48 hours, no names, but the routing IDs matched the transactions. The pattern was complete. Harrison leaned forward now, panic breaking through control. This is illegal, he said. You can't just pull private financial data like this. I didn't pull it, I said. I finally looked at him. Just once, I verified it. That ended his argument. Because legality doesn't erase truth. It just delays consequences. Chloe moved then, a small step forward. Her voice came out tight, strained. This is fabricated, she said. She's manipulating data. No, I said. Just that, nothing else. Because she knew. The second she saw her own structure on that screen, she knew. And that's when it happened. The shift, control broke. Not all at once, but fast. This is insane, Chloe snapped louder now. She's been unstable for years. You're all just falling for this because she's good at pretending. Her voice rose. Sharp, cracking. She's dangerous. Chloe shouted, pointing at me. She's not normal. She's not. She stopped, because no one was looking at me anymore. They were looking at her. And she felt it. That's when people show who they really are. When the room stops agreeing with them. Chloe's breathing changed. Faster, less controlled. She's lying, she said again, but it didn't land the same. Not with the screen behind her. Not with the data still visible. Not with the judge watching her instead of me. Something snapped. She moved. Fast, not calculated, not controlled. She lunged toward me, hands out. Not a strike, not precise, desperate. I didn't step back. Didn't flinch. Didn't react emotionally. I shifted my weight, turned slightly, raised one arm, redirected her movement. Minimal force, maximum efficiency. She lost balance immediately. Momentum carried her forward, then down, hard. The sound of her hitting the floor echoed through the room. Not loud, but enough. Enough to end whatever image she thought she still had. Gasps. Movement, chairs shifting. But I stayed where I was, still, controlled, unchanged. Chloe pushed herself up, slightly disoriented, anger burning through. Whatever was left of her composure, This isn't over, she said, voice shaking now. You don't get to do this to me. The doors opened, again, but this time no hesitation, no build-up, just action. Multiple agents stepped in. Plain clothes, clear posture, purpose. They moved directly toward the bench. Badges out, Criminal Investigation Division, the lead agent said. We have a warrant. The room froze again, but this time, not from uncertainty, from confirmation. The agent looked directly at Chloe. Major Chloe Hale, you are under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy related to military procurement contracts. Chloe didn't move, didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. Another agent stepped toward Harrison. Sir, you'll need to come with us as well. Harrison's face went pale, not red, not angry, empty, because this wasn't a conversation. This was consequence. Evelyn stepped back, hands shaking, no performance left, no script to follow, just reality. The agents moved efficiently, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Chloe tried to pull back once, reflex, not strategy, it didn't matter. They secured her arms, controlled, final. The metal cuffs came out, cold, precise, and snapped shut around her wrists with a sharp, unmistakable sound. That was it. That was the moment. Everything she built, every lie, every move ended right there. Not with a scream, not with a fight, with a click. And just like that, her control was gone. The sound of the cuffs still echoed as they pulled Chloe out of the room. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Her heels scraped against the floor for a second before she found her footing again, but it didn't matter. The agents didn't slow down, they didn't argue, they didn't react to anything she said. They just moved, efficient, controlled, gone. The door shut behind them, and just like that, the noise left with her. What stayed behind was heavier, quieter, real. No one spoke, no one moved, because there was nothing left to perform, no narrative to control, no angle to spin. Just consequences. I stayed where I was, standing, still, breathing steady, the same way I had the entire time. Across the room, my mother broke first. Evelyn didn't ease into it, didn't try to hold it together, she dropped. Right there on the floor. The sound of her knees hitting the wood was sharp enough to cut through the silence. Riley, she said, voice collapsing in on itself. Riley, please. She crawled the last step toward me and grabbed onto the fabric of my sleeve. Tight, desperate. Please, you have to fix this, she said. You have to take it back. Just tell them it's a misunderstanding. We can work this out. We're family. I looked down at her hand, not at her face, at her grip. Shaking, weak. For the first time in my life, she wasn't controlling the situation. She was reacting to it. Behind her, Harrison hadn't moved. He was still standing, but everything about him was different. The posture, gone. The confidence, gone. The authority he carried like it was permanent, gone. What replaced it wasn't anger, it wasn't denial, it was fear, pure, undiluted. The kind that comes when someone finally understands the outcome is no longer negotiable. Riley, he said, voice lower now, unsteady. You don't have to do this. I didn't respond. He took a step forward, slow, careful, like he was approaching something that might snap. This can still be handled privately, he continued. We don't need to escalate this. We can, no, I said. One word, flat, clean. He stopped. Because there was nothing to push against. No emotion, no hesitation, just a line. Evelyn tightened her grip on my sleeve. Please, she whispered. I'm your mother. That word, mother, like it was supposed to mean something right now. I finally looked at her, really looked. Not with anger, not with disappointment, just clarity. This isn't about family, I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't break, didn't carry anything unnecessary. It stopped being about family the moment you decided I was disposable. Her face broke. Not performative, not controlled, real. Because she knew it was true. Harrison opened his mouth again, stopped, closed it. Because he didn't have anything left that would work. I let the silence sit for a second. Then I spoke again. You thought my silence meant something was wrong with me. Each word placed exactly where it needed to be. You thought because I didn't argue, didn't react, didn't explain myself, that I was weak. Evelyn shook her head slightly. No, we were trying to know, I said again. She stopped. Because now she understood. This wasn't a conversation. This was a conclusion. That wasn't weakness. I continued. That was discipline. I stepped back slightly, not to create distance, to remove her hand from my sleeve. She didn't resist, didn't hold on, because there was nothing left to hold. You called me unstable, I said, because you couldn't control me. Harrison looked away, just for a second, but it was enough. I adjusted my sleeve. Small movement, precise. Then I stepped past them. No hesitation, no pause. Dr. Vance was already waiting near the exit. He didn't say anything, didn't need to. We walked out together. The hallway felt different now, not because it changed, because everything else did. Behind us, the courtroom stayed quiet. No shouting, no chaos, just the aftermath. By the time we reached the exit, the judge's voice carried faintly from inside, measured, formal. The court finds no basis for the claim of mental incompetence, he said. The petition for guardianship is denied. A pause. Then the full inheritance, including all associated assets and properties, is hereby confirmed under the sole ownership of Riley Hale. That was it. No celebration, no reaction, just confirmation. Outside, the air felt colder, cleaner. Dr. Vance glanced at me once, not evaluating, not questioning, just acknowledging. You handled that exactly how I expected, he said. I know, I replied. A small pause, then he nodded. That was the end of that conversation. No praise, no follow-up, just understanding. We parted ways without ceremony, because this wasn't a victory. It was a correction. Hours later, I stood on the balcony of the estate, my estate. The wind moved through the open space without resistance. No noise from the street reached this high, just quiet. Below, the last of the police vehicles pulled away. Harrison and Evelyn were in the back of one of them. No control, no influence, no leverage, just passengers, exactly like everyone else. I didn't watch them leave, didn't need to. I already knew how it ended. The city stretched out in front of me, uninterrupted, unbothered, the same way it always had. Nothing about the world changed. Just my position in it. I rested my hands lightly against the railing, steady, relaxed, no tension. Because this was the part people don't understand. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need anger. It doesn't need closure. It just needs precision. They tried to define me, control me, reduce me to something manageable. They failed. Completely. Not because I fought harder, because I didn't react the way they expected. That's the difference. That's always the difference. I stood there for a moment longer, then turned, and walked back inside. No hesitation, no second thought, just forward. I stood in the middle of the living room and didn't turn on the lights. Didn't need to. The house was quiet enough to think without distraction. That's something people misunderstand about silence. They think it means something is missing. It doesn't. It means something is under control. I set my keys down on the table and took a slow breath. Not to calm down, just habit. People kept asking the wrong question about what happened in that courtroom. They'd look at the outcome and think the turning point was the evidence, or the general, or the arrest. It wasn't. The turning point happened long before any of that. It happened every time I chose not to react. That's the part most people miss, because we've been trained to believe that if you don't defend yourself immediately, you're losing. If you don't raise your voice, you don't have power. If you don't fight back, you're weak. That's not how it works, not where it matters. I walked over to the window and looked out across the property. No noise, no movement, just space. When they called me unstable, I said quietly, more to organize the thought than to hear it, they weren't diagnosing me. They were describing something they didn't understand. And people tend to label what they can't control. My family didn't think I was dangerous because I was unpredictable. They thought I was dangerous because I wasn't reacting the way they expected. No arguments, no breakdown, no need to explain myself. That made them uncomfortable, so they called it a problem. That's how it usually works. If you don't play by someone else's emotional rules, they assume something is wrong with you. It's easier than admitting they don't have control. I leaned my shoulder against the wall and crossed my arms. There's a difference most people never learn between suppressing emotion and controlling it. Suppression is avoidance. You ignore what you feel, you bury it, and eventually it shows up in ways you don't control. Control is different. You feel everything. You just don't let it decide what you do next. That's what they saw in me, and misunderstood. They saw someone who didn't react under pressure and assumed something was broken. In reality, nothing was. That's what training does. It removes unnecessary reactions. Not because emotions are bad, because timing matters. If you react at the wrong time, you lose leverage. And once you lose leverage, you're just another person trying to win an argument instead of controlling an outcome. That's what Chloe did. She needed me to react. She needed me to get angry, to push back, to defend myself emotionally. Because the second I did that, she could use it, frame it, validate everything she said about me. But I didn't. And that's why she lost before the evidence even hit the table. I pushed off the wall and walked into the kitchen, pouring a glass of water without thinking about it. Simple actions, clear mind. That's another thing people get wrong. Control doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become precise. There's a difference. Cold is disconnected. Precision is intentional. Every move has a reason. Every response has a purpose. Most people don't operate like that. They react, instantly. Emotion first, logic second, if at all. And that's where they give everything away. Because the moment you react emotionally, you expose your position, your fear, your insecurity, your priorities. You make yourself predictable. And predictable people are easy to manipulate. I took a sip and set the glass down. Think about how most conflicts go. Someone says something disrespectful. You respond. They escalate. You escalate. Now you're both arguing. No one's thinking. No one's in control. And somehow the person who stays calm gets labeled as the problem. Too quiet, too distant, too off. I shook my head slightly. That's not instability, I said. That's discipline. There's a reason trained operators don't react under pressure. Because reacting gets you killed. In civilian life, it doesn't get you killed. But it does cost you. Opportunities, credibility, position, respect. Every time you lose control, you're handing someone else the advantage. And most people don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're defending themselves. They're not. They're exposing themselves. I walked back into the living room and sat down. No rush, no urgency. Because this part matters more than anything that happened in that courtroom. If you take anything from what happened to me, take this. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to respond to every attack. And you definitely don't need to prove yourself to people who have already decided who you are. That's a losing strategy. Always. Instead, pause. Not because you're unsure, because you're choosing. Observe. Not just what they're saying, but why they're saying it. And then decide. Not react. Decide. Those are not the same thing. Reaction is automatic. Decision is controlled. And control is where your advantage is. I leaned forward slightly, resting my forearms on my knees. You want to know the fastest way to lose power, I said. Let someone else decide how you feel. Because once they control that, they control you. And most people hand that over without even thinking about it. A comment, a look, a tone. And suddenly their entire state shifts. Now they're playing defense. Now they're emotional. Now they're predictable. That's not strength. That's exposure. Silence doesn't mean you don't have something to say. It means you're choosing when to say it. And more importantly, when not to. I sat there for a moment, letting the quiet settle again. Same as before. Nothing missing. Everything in place. Controlled. That's what people don't understand. Peace isn't loud. It's not reactive. It's not emotional. It's precise. And if you can learn to control your response instead of reacting to everything thrown at you, you don't just survive situations like that. You control them, completely. I didn't turn around when the doors closed behind me that day. Not in the courtroom, not outside. Not even later when everything was already decided. Because I wasn't interested in how it looked. I was focused on when it mattered. That's the part most people get wrong. They think winning is about what you do in the moment. It's not. It's about what you choose not to do before that moment ever arrives. I walked through the house slowly, not because I was tired, but because I didn't need to rush anymore. Everything that needed to happen already had. I didn't fight them when they insulted me, I said, thinking it through as I moved. I waited until it mattered. That wasn't patience. That was selection. Most people fight everything, every comment, every insult, every misunderstanding. They respond immediately because they feel like they have to. Like silence means they're losing. It doesn't. It means you haven't chosen your battlefield yet. That's the difference. If I had reacted when Chloe first questioned me, raised my voice, defended myself emotionally, tried to set the record straight in that room, I would have lost. Not because I was wrong, because I would have been playing her game. And her game wasn't about truth. It was about perception, emotion, control. That's where people get trapped. They think every attack requires a response. It doesn't. Some attacks are bait. And if you respond, you're not defending yourself. You're stepping into a position someone else designed for you. I stopped near the staircase and rested my hand lightly on the railing. There's something people don't want to accept. Not every battle is worth your energy. And more importantly, not every battle is meant to be fought immediately. Timing matters more than effort, always. Chloe wasn't trying to win an argument. She was building a case, slow, layered, calculated. Every comment, every label, every move she made was leading somewhere. And if I had engaged early, I would have given her exactly what she needed: confirmation. Instead, I let her build it, let her commit, let her lock herself into a position she couldn't walk back from. That's what most people don't understand. Winning doesn't come from reacting. It comes from letting the other person go far enough that they can't recover. I moved into the kitchen and poured another glass of water. Same motion as before, no difference. Because nothing about this required intensity. Just clarity. People think strength is about pushing back, I said. It's not. It's about knowing when to push. And when not to. There's a cost to every reaction. Energy, focus, position, and most people spend all of it on things that don't matter. Arguments that go nowhere. People who don't listen. Situations that don't change. Then when something real shows up, they're already drained. Already reactive. Already out of position. That's how you lose before anything even starts. I took a sip and set the glass down. If you look at what happened in that courtroom, it wasn't about proving I was right. It was about choosing the moment where being right actually mattered. Not when they talked, not when they judged, not when they underestimated me, but when it counted. When the decision was being made. That's when I acted. Everything before that was set up. Most people don't have that discipline. They want resolution immediately. They want to correct every false assumption the second it appears. They want to be understood. That's where they go wrong. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You need to be effective at the right time. Those are not the same thing. I walked back into the living room and sat down again. Same position, same stillness, because this part matters. If you're dealing with people who manipulate, who twist narratives, who try to pull you into emotional reactions, you need to ask yourself 3 things. Not 10, not a list you forget. Just 3. Is this worth my energy? Do I have leverage right now? And what's the outcome I actually want? If you can't answer those, you don't engage. Simple. Because engagement without leverage is just noise. And noise doesn't win anything. It just reveals your position. Chloe made one critical mistake. She assumed I would respond like everyone else, defend myself, argue, push back. She built her entire plan around that assumption. And when I didn't, everything she prepared became useless. That's the advantage of not being predictable. You force other people to operate without a script. And most of them don't know how to do that. They panic, they overreach, they make mistakes. That's when you move. Not before, never before. I leaned back slightly, letting the thought settle. You don't need to win every argument, I said. You need to win the one that decides everything. That's the shift. That's the mindset. Because life isn't a series of debates. It's a series of positions. And every time you react without thinking, you give up ground. Every time you engage without purpose, you lose leverage. And once that's gone, you're just another voice trying to be heard. That's not power. That's noise. I looked out across the room. Everything was exactly where it should be. No chaos, no urgency, no unfinished business. Because I didn't fight everything. I waited, I selected, I acted when it mattered. That's why it worked. And if you're paying attention, that's what you should take from this. Not the outcome, not the money, not the courtroom, the decision-making, the restraint, the ability to let something play out. Until the moment you can end it completely, because that's what control actually looks like. Not constant action, precise action, at the right time, and nowhere else. I stood on the balcony and didn't look down, not at the street, not at the driveway, not at the place where everything used to feel familiar. Because familiarity doesn't mean safety. That's something people learn too late. The wind moved across the property without resistance. No noise, no interruptions, just space. That's what happens when you remove the people who were never supposed to have access to you in the first place. The hardest part wasn't exposing them, I said quietly. It was accepting who they really were. That's the part no one prepares you for. Not the conflict, not the betrayal, the clarity. Because once you see people for who they actually are, you don't get to go back. Most people don't want that. They'd rather hold on to the idea of family than deal with the reality of it. Because the idea is comfortable, the reality isn't. I rested my hands on the railing, steady, relaxed. There's a belief people grow up with. That family comes first, no matter what. That blood means loyalty, that history means obligation. That if someone is related to you, they deserve access to you. That's not true. And it never was. My family didn't fail me in a moment. They revealed themselves. That's the difference. Chloe didn't suddenly become manipulative. She always was. Harrison didn't suddenly choose control over integrity. That was always his default. Evelyn didn't suddenly collapse under pressure. She had been avoiding it her entire life. What changed was that I stopped ignoring it. That's what most people struggle with. They don't see the red flags, they explain them, they justify them, they minimize them. Because it's easier than accepting that the people closest to you might not be good for you. I exhaled slowly, not to release tension, just to stay grounded. Shared blood doesn't mean shared values, I said. That's a line most people need to hear more than once. Because loyalty without standards becomes self-destruction. If you stay loyal to people who don't respect you, you're not being strong, you're being used. And most people don't realize it until the damage is already done. Harrison and Evelyn didn't just support Chloe, they chose her. They chose control. They chose convenience. And when they needed a solution, they chose to sacrifice me. Not emotionally. Strategically. That's what made it clear. That's what made it final. I wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with a decision. And once someone makes that kind of decision about you, there's nothing left to repair. That's where boundaries come in. Not as a reaction, as a requirement. Most people treat boundaries like negotiations. They explain them. They justify them. They wait for approval. That's not a boundary. That's a request. And requests can be denied. A real boundary doesn't need permission. It's enforced by action, not explanation. I pushed away from the railing and walked back inside. The house stayed quiet. Same as before, nothing missing, because peace isn't about who's around you. It's about who isn't. I moved through the room slowly, letting the thought settle. You don't need people to agree with your boundaries, I said. You need them to exist. That's it. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. If someone respects it, they stay. If they don't, they remove themselves. Or you remove them. That's how it works. Not complicated, just uncomfortable. Because people will push. They'll guilt you. They'll remind you of history, of family, of everything you're supposed to be. That's not loyalty. That's leverage. And if you fall for it, you give up control. Again. I sat down in the same chair as before. Same position, same stillness. Because this isn't about anger. It never was. I'm not angry at what happened. I'm clear about it. And clarity is more useful than emotion. Every time. If you're watching this, if you've ever been in a situation where someone close to you crosses a line, you need to understand something. You don't fix people by staying. You don't earn respect by tolerating disrespect. And you don't protect relationships by sacrificing yourself. That's not loyalty. That's erosion. And eventually, there's nothing left. I leaned forward slightly, forearms on my knees, focused, direct. Here's what you need to look for, I said. Not theories, not opinions, patterns. If someone constantly minimizes your perspective, that's not misunderstanding, that's dismissal. If they only respect you when you agree with them, that's not support. That's control. If they use emotion to manipulate your decisions, that's not connection, that's strategy. And once you see those patterns, you have a choice. Stay and accept the outcome, or leave and take control back. There isn't a third option, not a real one. I sat back again, letting the silence return. Because this is the part most people avoid. Not the action, the decision. Walking away doesn't feel powerful, it feels quiet, final, and sometimes lonely. But here's the truth. Peace isn't loud, It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need agreement. It doesn't need anyone else to understand it. It just needs to be yours. I looked out across the room one last time. Everything exactly where it should be. Nothing out of place. Nothing unresolved. The quiet life isn't empty, I said. It's controlled. A short pause. Then I added, and that's the only kind of peace that lasts. I stood up, turned, and walked forward. No hesitation. No looking back. Just control.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.